Everybody joining me on the show today is Bill Bender. Of course, you can check him out over at the Sporting News. He has wall-to-wall coverage of college football and much, much more over there. And Bill, as always, appreciate you taking the time coming on the show.
Hey, Phillip. Thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Probably figured, okay, national championship last week, last Monday, over a week ago. It's going to be a calm and quiet college football news cycle, but then everything changed, didn't it?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing, that since Nick Saban retired, there have been 6 coaching changes. Guys going from Group of 5 schools to coach at Alabama. Kalen, DeBoer, Jed Fish. It kicked off an unbelievable set of dominoes that, I'm going to be honest with you, Phillip, when I got off the plane from Houston, I thought, oh, hey, deep breath, I'm good, season over. Not so much 48 hours later. So it's been a wild week and a half, and we're still kind of waiting on what happens with Harbaugh and the Chargers, or whether or not he returns to Michigan, which will be the last one, and then we can actually have an off season.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I was joking with somebody the other day. I said, Michigan wins the national title, monumental win. The program hadn't won one since the 90s when they shared it with Nebraska. Everybody should be talking about Michigan. And then Nick Saban announces this news. It's like everybody forgot Michigan even won the national championship.
Yeah, that was the thing. It just seems like so long ago now, and I was in the building. And, you don't take – as writers, podcasters, radio guys, I don't think we take enough time sometimes to really enjoy what we do. And that was an enjoyable moment for me. I've been around the Big Ten my whole life. It was a lot of fun to see in person. And but, yeah, it seems like ages ago, because now we've got Alabama, we've got Washington with a coaching change, we've got Arizona, a team that was billed as a top 10 team going into next year with what they've got coming back, coaching change with Brent Brennan. So, and we're just getting into what's going to be in a completely different year for college football. So, yeah, it's been wild.
Before we jump into Alabama and Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer and all that stuff going on with Alabama right now, talk about Jim Harbaugh. Do you see any scenario where he returns to Michigan, or do you think it's almost a certainty that he's headed somewhere in the National Football League?
I thought he would have been the Chargers coach by now, honestly. Now, I get that they had a parade and they had those kind of things going on, and then there's the rumors that, he kind of wants to stay, but he wants – it's like an episode of Law and Order. He wants immunity to stay at Michigan, and for violations that haven't really been – he hasn't been penalized for. So I think that is an added wrinkle. I think Michigan's roster is gutted but it's in a good way. It means they did something. They won a national title. They're going to have a ton of guys in the NFL draft, J.J. McCarthy being one of them, obviously. And, for Jim Harbaugh, it's a question. To me, it's, okay, if you stay at Michigan, they're not going to fire you, absent a huge NCAA thing. If he goes to the NFL, about in a season, right? So I think that's the big question for me, is what he's going to do. And, I'm still leaning that he'll be the Chargers' next coach.
Yeah, just looking at the Michigan team, too, as well. I mean, this was the third straight year they'd made the playoff, and they win it all. Of course, they beat Alabama, which we did not know at the time was Nick Saban's final game. And then they beat Washington, and kind of the same way, pressuring the quarterback. Just when you look at this Michigan team, what was different from this Michigan team from the previous 2 seasons where they lost in the semifinals?
Oh, they were just a veteran team on defense that was so good at keeping things in front. I don't think we've spoken since the Alabama game, where they were just more physical at the point of attack, which was wild. And they still almost lost the game because of a bunch of special teams mistakes. But, yeah, I mean, this was a really good Michigan team, really veteran Michigan team. Guys like Blake Corum, you can't undersell the value of a guy like Blake Corum or J.J. McCarthy, the leadership, Michael Barrett, Mike Sanders still. They're just such a veteran team that was very good. And I think, the eye-opening part to me, like I said, it was the first time with them that I thought, hey, up front, they look like they can handle Georgia. They can handle Alabama. Georgia, Michigan would have been a really good game, just like Alabama was.
Yeah, I know that was our conversation too. Which we had it. Back when after the playoff was announced, the 4 teams, the 4 best. I said it's hard to have that argument with Georgia sitting over there that she had the 4 best, but that's an old argument. Michigan's the champs. Alabama, and we talked about it a little bit there off the top here. Just the retirement of Nick Saban. Just when that happened over a week ago, it just feels like it's been longer, but it is just a little over a week ago that he retired. How big of a surprise was it for you?
Not a huge surprise. Maybe the timing of it, just because, like I said, we're in January. The season's over. Perhaps, yeah, I think he just came to that decision. I don't think it was premeditated. I don't think there was anything around it. I think he just came to the decision that, hey, I'm going to retire. And there was no indication when I was in Houston through the people I talked to that he was anywhere close to retiring, which was the wild thing. So I think that just changes the game so much. Obviously his legacy, I think the one stat I just keep hammering at people is if you take his SEC championship games, his BCS championship games, his college football playoff semifinals and championship games, you come up with a record of 24-6. That's incredible, and it really is. And to win 80% of the biggest games possible over the course of a career between LSU and Alabama, it's going to be impossible to replicate that.
Yeah, and you talked about his SEC championship record. He only lost to one SEC championship game. That was in 2008 to Tim Tebow, which he got revenge on that the next year. And that's amazing in itself that they would get to the SEC championship game, and you're almost just like, yeah, there was years where you may predict the other team may win, but they were winning that game every year except for that first one.
Yeah, and obviously, that's this high standard, and people are going to wonder, okay, where does this go from here? And it, for Kalen, that's an impossible job. He's done a good job assembling a good staff, pulling guys like Kane Womack, Maurice Linguist out of the group of 5 to be head coaches. The offensive staff, those guys at Washington, they were good. They were really good on offense. So he's a winner too. And the only thing to watch, and you and I talk all the time, is I buy this factor too. The fact that he's a South Dakota boy in the South, the big question is recruiting. And this is just an outsider making this observation to you, is when it goes south for one of those guys when they're coaching in the SEC, that's the first thing y'all point to, whether it was Brian Harsin or, there's other examples of that. Joe Moorhead at Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. When the leash is a little bit less if you're a quote-unquote outsider. I don't think that's rocket science to you.
No, it's not. And I'm glad you mentioned Brian Harsin, which any Alabama fans that's listening to this, they'll be hollering at me. They'll say, well, he's not Brian Harsin. I think Brian Harsin's a good football coach. He just wasn't a fit in the Southeast and at Auburn, which Auburn is a different animal than a lot of them. But you're right. You do get the leash is a lot shorter, and I'll get your opinion on this. Had it been like a Lane Kiffin or Steve Sarkisian, somebody that had worked under Saban before, do you feel like that would be one where they get a little bit longer leash than maybe what Kalen DeBoer could potentially get?
Yes, but I also think those guys were smart enough not to be the guy to follow the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, maybe they bring them in next. Dabo, I use the same analogy up here. I said Dabo plays off great at Clemson. Would have been an interesting candidate for Alabama given the ties. Dabo wouldn't fit at Michigan, fit at Ohio State. That's the thing. You can't. That's why this sport is regional, and I think that's one of the things that makes this sport so much fun is you have those conversations. But to answer your question, yeah, I think they were probably at least called for sure. And maybe it was like, I don't know if I'm going to follow Nick Saban because it's going to be so darn hard. You heard mm-hmm. Steve Spurrier talking about that on the Feinbaum show last week.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring up Spurrier because that's kind of something I was just having casual conversation with people. That's what I always think of when you want to be. You don't want to be the guy to follow the guy. You want to be the follow the guy to follow the guy. When you look at Steve Spurrier when he left Florida, then Ron Zook comes in. He wasn't bad. They were usually an 8-3, 8-4 team. And then Urban Meyer comes in, wins a couple of national championships because he's not following Spurrier. He was following Ron Zook. It's a little bit different situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's the program that you could really draw the closest comparison to. And we did that in a column over at SN where, Florida sifted through some coaches, had a lot of turnover, got Urban Meyer, had that run with him, but it was short-lived. And the rest has been really tough. If you look at Alabama between Bear Bryant and Nick Saban, same deal. Head coaches have success. Gene Stallings won a national title. Head coaches win 10 games. He also had a lot of instability and a quick need to press reset when things went wrong. So I think these are some of the challenges that Kalen DeBoer will face, and not just it doesn't happen overnight. But I would tell Alabama fans, give the dude some time. Look at his track record. Look what he did at Washington in 2 years. I mean, that doesn't happen at Washington. It hadn't happened at Washington since the 1990s. And, yeah, Michigan beat them, but, that's Michigan. Michigan's one of the 5, 6, 7 great football factories in the sport right now.
You're talking about, and, tremendous job he's done everywhere he's been. He's won everywhere he's been, has Kalen DeBoer. But, I know you look at the Alabama players that are leaving the program. Of course, it started, Isaiah Baum, their best receiver. He's off to Texas. See, Caleb Downs is in the portal. See, a lot of players that have entered the portal have left Alabama. So at least going into year one, for you, how concerning is that if you're Kalen DeBoer?
Pretty concerning, yeah. I mean, obviously, this is the hard part with college football now. I mean, because it's the timing on the calendar, and now, what do you do? Who you're supposed to pick up? I mean, I guess with spring practice, there'll be more. There was going to be some roster attrition. There always is. And it's more noticeable at places like Alabama. I mean, Caleb Downs' biggest loss. He's one of the best players in college football already, and he has 2 more years. So if he ends up in a Georgia uniform or Ohio State uniform, that's something that, that wouldn't be the best thing.
Yeah, it does. I mean this jokingly, but I kind of see at the same time. I think Kirby's over there at Georgia kind of licking his chops right now, seeing all these players and coaches departing from Alabama. He's like, okay, let me have this guy, because it seems like a lot, especially with the defensive backs. That's with Javarius Robinson going over there. Georgia's really, some of those guys are headed that direction too.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. So I think Georgia will benefit. Ohio State will benefit. And, we talked about this before I came on, the early top 25 type list. Mine's outdated already. It lasted about 4 days. But I wouldn't change too much. I think Ohio State, Texas, and Georgia will probably be 1, 2, and 3 in some order in most lists. Alabama and Michigan, because of the coaching changes, will probably be in that top 10, but there's a lot of question marks. And then, like I said, a school like Arizona, all that momentum they built, they lost their coach. So where does it go from here with Brent Brennan? Especially if Noah Fafita gets in the portal and goes somewhere else. So it's definitely fluid. That list will change. A lot will change in college football next year. A lot will change how we kind of size up who those 12 playoff teams will be.
Yeah, that's right. As we go into that. And, you talking about, with Ohio State, just what they've been doing. I mean, Will Howard, and you get Quinshon Judkins, if they get Caleb Downs, they look like they're really stocking up for a big year. I know Ryan Day has had a great record there, but obviously not beating Michigan is something Ohio State fans do not like. That's concerning for them. But it really looks like Ohio State's really pushing hard through the portal and really stacking up this roster to make a run at it next season.
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's loaded. I mean, getting Quinshon Judkins, getting Will Howard, the response, it's kind of like an Empire Strikes Back response to Michigan winning the title, and increases the urgency there. There's nothing wrong with that program. The other part that they're bought in is it's kind of a cool thing to see is several of their defensive stars came back. That was a top 5 defense this year. And those guys bypassed the NFL to come back because they felt a responsibility to come back and beat Michigan and win a Big Ten championship and take their national title shot, which, that allowed the bad feelings from Michigan or watching Michigan win it all, or the Missouri Bowl game, which was a complete disaster. It allowed those out the door.
Yeah. I've tried to erase watching that game out of my memory. Just that was a bad Friday night. I should have done something else that night, Bill. Watching that game, it was a tough one.
That's systematic offensive football there for a while, sure. But yeah, I think all of that is out the door, and Ryan Day's built some momentum, and obviously the pressure will be when they get on the field in this new look Big Ten to go execute and win that Big Ten championship.
Real quick before I let you go, as we talked about this, I think the last time I had you on the show, that me and you share something common that we're, both Packer fans. Any chance against the 49ers? Can they make a big surprise like they did against the Cowboys?
Well, I'm still excited. Jordan Love was wonderful against the Dallas Cowboys. But it works like this, Phillip. You go from being elated that they won to by Tuesday, I was kind of like, I'm just going to enjoy this till the 49ers beat them, to, yesterday it was kind of like, well, if they do these things right, they got a shot, to by Saturday I'm going to be like, hey, we're going to beat the 49ers. We're going to the Super Bowl. Why not? And the biggest reason why there will be some semblance of belief is that Jordan Love is fantastic. The way that he spreads the ball to these receivers is unbelievable. Their defense might not be good enough to win this game, but anytime they play the 49ers, I get excited, and it'll be another fun chapter in that rivalry.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see if we can do something Aaron Rodgers struggled against. I was against the 49ers, so it'll be fun this weekend. We still got the football with the NFL. And, Bill, it's always fun having you on the show, talking all things college football, and a little Packers thrown in there. But the listeners and viewers out there want to check you out. Where can they find you on the work you're doing?
Yeah, I'm at Bill Bender 92 at sportingnews.com. I'm super excited. Like I said, I appreciate all you do for me, and we'll have plenty of content up about college football and the NFL and Harbaugh and Alabama and everything else over the next coming days.
All right, sounds good. Everybody go give Bill a follow and check out the Sporting News. And Bill, once again, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to when we get to do this again.
Hey, no problem. Thanks so much.